The first sign was the noise. Loud laughing and too many feet running up my front steps all at once. I opened the door and there they were. My younger brother Zach, his wife Madison, their 3 kids, and my parents Carla and Greg. None of them were invited. But they stood there smiling, like they were supposed to be there. Zach pushed his sunglasses up and looked around my porch like he was checking out the place. His oldest kid, Noah, was already pressing his face against my living room window. Madison stood to the side, holding their baby in a yellow blanket, giving me that small fake smile she always used when pretending we were friends. I never gave them my new address. No one in the family had ever been here before, but I didn't. Ask how they found me. Madison always had a way of finding things. My mom, Carla, just walked in like it was her house. "Look at this place," she said. "Rachel, you've really done well for yourself." But it didn't sound like a compliment. It sounded like she was judging. My dad, Greg, stood behind her, quiet as usual. Zach came in next without even looking at me. The kids were already running around, picking out rooms with their eyes. Madison came in last, holding the baby and staring straight at me. "It's just beautiful," she said. "Big, too." And that's when I realized this wasn't a quick visit. This was a plan everyone else knew about, except me. This wasn't new. It just hadn't happened in my house before. Growing up, Zach always ruled the living room. He was 3 years younger than me, but louder, messier, and always forgiven. He once threw the TV remote at my head and broke it. I got in trouble for yelling. Mom said I was too sensitive. Dad just looked out the window like he didn't hear anything. When I turned 11, I started doing the laundry. By 13, I packed lunches for both of us and left his backpack by the door so he wouldn't forget. If I didn't, Mom would say I wasn't helping the family. Zach got a Nintendo for his 8th birthday. I got a grocery store cake and a card that said, "Love all of us." No names. Zach was the golden child. Mom loved showing him off to neighbors as her brilliant little athlete. I was just Rachel, quiet, into computers or something. When I got my first A in calculus, no one said a word. When Zach barely passed biology with a C, we all went out for ice cream to celebrate effort. By the time I was 15, Zach had already shoved me down the stairs once while playing. I had a big bruise on my shoulder and wore long sleeves for a week to hide it. Mom made me promise not to tell Grandma at Thanksgiving. "We don't need drama," she said. "Not with your brother's future on the line." After that, I stopped asking for anything. No prom dress, no rides to study group. I just walked. The school library stayed open late, and the janitor let me sit in the corner until my legs stopped hurting. When I was 17, I left. I didn't even pack a full bag. Just a hoodie, some notebooks, and a charger. I had $200 saved in a coffee can, and a printed bus schedule from the library. Before I left, Mom told me not to come back unless I had real direction. I was still in high school, but that wasn't the issue. The issue was that I wasn't useful to them anymore. I crashed on friends' couches for months. I still graduated on time. They didn't come. No call, no card. I told myself that was better. Clean cuts heal faster. I never went back for holidays, no barbecues, no Christmas. If they noticed, they didn't say. Or maybe they liked it better, with one less plate at the table. Zach got married at 22. I wasn't invited. I saw the photos online. Madison in a lace dress, smiling. Zach holding her like he never did anything wrong. They had their first kid a year later. Then the second. By then, they'd already moved in with my parents. It made childcare easier. I guess Mom posted pictures all the time. 3 generations under one roof. I wasn't in a single one. I became what they called me when I wasn't around. The one who left. The one who didn't understand family. The one who made her bed. So now let her lie in it, and I did. For years. But now it wasn't the bed I was worried about. It was the foundation under it. In the spring of 2020, the world shut down, and so did my lease. I lost my job first. I worked as a QA contractor at a logistics software firm. No severance, just a form email and a final. Paycheck that barely lasted a month. My roommate stayed 2 more weeks, then went back to Michigan to stay with her parents. I didn't have that option. I couldn't afford the condo alone. I sold most of what I owned, furniture, monitors, even a mirror I loved, just to make rent. Then, I stopped sleeping inside. I had nothing left, except my truck, an old, Silver Ford, beat up and dented, and a camper I bought 3 years ago on a random day for about $200. I never used it. Told myself I might go camping someday. I never did. Now, I had no choice. I bolted the camper to my truck, cleaned it out, and turned it into a tiny home. Just a foam mattress, a small fridge, and a plastic bin of clothes. I parked behind a strip mall that first night. The streetlights kept flickering. A group of teens skated past after midnight. One threw an empty can at my truck. I didn't sleep. I just laid there, hands pressed against the wall, listening for footsteps. The next day, I called my parents and told them the truth. Job gone, lease ended. I just needed a driveway to park in for a while. Nothing more. Carla didn't hesitate. "That's not going to work for us," she said. "We've got the kids here. It's too crowded." Then Zach got on the phone. "If you want to park here," he said, "you're going to pay rent." The number he named was almost double what a local lot would have charged. I didn't argue. I just hung up. After that, it was parking lots and grocery stores, abandoned office parks, a side street near the river. I found outlets behind laundromats to charge. My batteries, used solar when I could. Showered at the gym, or, if that didn't work, used the public sink at a 24-hour gas station. I kept my mail at a friend's apartment. Ate canned soup cold more times than I could count. One night in July, the fridge failed and spoiled everything. I didn't cry. I just threw it all out. Eventually, I found a warehouse job in a neighboring city. I offered to take night shifts. Less traffic, no commute. I lived in the back lot. The owner looked the other way. "You show up on time," he said. "That's more than most." He let me use the water tap and a spare outlet by the generator. Even cleared a spot so I could unhook the camper and drive the truck during the day. It wasn't comfort, but it was stability. After the year I'd had, that counted for everything. 2 winters passed like that. I never told my parents where I was, never sent updates, never asked them to care. And they didn't. About 3 weeks after I posted a photo of my new house, just the porch steps, my hand holding the keys, there was no caption. Just one word. Home. I didn't give anyone the address. But one evening, just after I'd finished setting up the camper in the backyard, half habit, half insurance, I heard a knock, then another. Then the door opened without waiting for me. They came in like it was a Sunday open house. Carla, of course, was first, holding a Tupperware of something she claimed was for me. Madison followed, baby in her arms, surveying the kitchen like she was already planning where to hang family photos. Zach trailed behind, pointing at the ceilings and baseboards like he was inspecting a rental. The kids ran past him, shouting and laughing. Greg lingered near the door, jacket still on, like he wasn't sure if they were staying or just visiting. "This is beautiful, Rachel," Carla said. "You really did well for someone on her own." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Madison moved from room to room, commenting on the layout. 3 bedrooms, that's so generous. Honestly, it's bigger than I expected. Almost more than one person would ever need. Zach stayed quieter, but his eyes never stopped moving. "Closer to my work than I thought," he murmured, almost to himself. I stood in the hallway, back against the wall, watching them move through my space. The rooms weren't big. The floors still creaked. I hadn't hung any pictures yet. But it was mine. They hadn't asked to come in. They hadn't even knocked, really. They just moved like they already belonged. When Zach finally turned to me, his hands were in his pockets. His voice was too casual. "Got a minute?" he asked. The others stepped outside a little too quickly. Carla herding the kids. Madison still humming to the baby. Greg glanced at me once before turning away. I followed Zach into the kitchen. He leaned against the counter like it was his. "This place," he said. "It's really something. But you know it's too much, right?" He paused, looked at me, then kept going. "I mean, you've got the camper already. You know how to live light. And we've got the baby. Another on the way. Plus, this is 15 minutes from my job." I didn't speak. So I was thinking, Maddie and I, the kids, we could move. In here, just until we get on our feet. You could set up the camper in the backyard again, like before. You're used to it. He smiled, like it was a done deal, like it made sense to everyone but me. And still, I said nothing. Because deep down, I had always known they'd come. I just never thought they'd be this bold. 3 days passed in silence after that conversation. They left that night with vague goodbyes and too many lingering glances. I didn't hear from any of them after. Then Friday came. I pulled into my driveway just after 6, takeout in the passenger seat, keys in hand. And that's when I saw it. The moving truck, backed up almost to the porch. Zach's van parked beside it. The front door was wide open. Boxes were stacked in the entryway, toys scattered across the floor. The television was already on, some cartoon playing at full volume. Zach stepped outside holding a lamp. He didn't flinch, just nodded, like I was the one who was late. Madison appeared behind him, baby on her hip. She grinned. "It's happening," she said sweetly. "We're so glad you're letting us stay." Then she turned toward the living room like I wasn't even there. I didn't go inside. I walked back to my truck, locked the doors, and called the police. While the phone rang, I cracked the window just enough to breathe. That's when Madison came up to the glass, tapped twice with her fingernail. "You don't have to do this," she said. "Just let it happen. It's better for the kids." Then quieter, tilting her head, "Your mom said it's okay, and you always listen to her, don't you?" The 911 operator came on. I gave my name, the address, told them my house was being taken without my consent. When the officers arrived, Madison tried to charm them. Zach stayed inside, pretending to be busy assembling a crib. I walked the officers through everything, showed them my license, the deed, even the broken lock. Its core had been drilled out, the old brass knob tossed on the porch like trash. The drill they used was still plugged in, sitting there, bold as anything. The officers knocked. Zach opened the door, holding a stack of papers. "A lease," he said. "We have a lease. I took it from him. My name was on it. My signature, too. But it wasn't mine." I held the paper next to my ID, letting the officer see the differences. The loops, the slant, even the misspelling of my middle name. I looked at Zach. "This is fraud." His mouth opened, then closed. Behind him, Maddie's voice rose. Trying to say something about the children, the future, the family, the officer asked them both to step outside. That's when my parents showed up. Carla standing tall, Greg just behind her, hands shoved deep in his pockets. She walked straight to the police and said clear as day, "My daughter agreed to this." I didn't look at her. I handed the fake lease to the officer and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "This isn't just a lie, it's a felony. And if one more person walks into this house like they own it, I'll press charges." Madison broke first. She tore the lease in half, then into quarters, then into shreds. She tossed them like confetti onto the porch. The wind. Carried some into the yard. An officer told her to pick them up. Zach said nothing. Carla didn't cry this time. She just looked at me, jaw clenched. "You're being cruel," she said. I met her steady gaze. "No," I said. "I'm being clear." The officers told them all to leave immediately. And for once, they did. Quiet, no pleading. But I knew it wasn't over. People like them don't leave with the door closed. They leave it slightly ajar, waiting to come back. Christmas Eve came cold, with freezing rain and cinnamon from my aunt's pie. I'd invited 10 people, half cousins I hadn't seen in years. The rest, my uncle, his wife, 2 old college friends, came from out of state. Some drove 3 hours just to be there. They brought folding chairs, homemade food, and scratched CDs. One of them, my Uncle Don, had even burned a Ray Charles Christmas album. "No holiday felt right without it," he said. We laughed more than I expected. No one asked about my parents. No one mentioned Zach. They'd all read the post months before I locked down my profile. No one questioned it. Around 8, the door opened. I hadn't invited them. Didn't give them the time. But there they were. Carla first. Holding a tray of store-bought cookies like that made a difference. Greg behind her, stiff and silent. Zach walked in with his hands raised, like he came in peace. Madison followed. No baby this time. Just makeup, perfume, that permanent pout. They all said, "Merry Christmas," like it was still theirs to say. The music stopped. Chairs creaked. My cousin Lauren stood slowly, arms crossed. Uncle Don looked at me, waiting. I said nothing. Then he turned to Carla. "You weren't invited." Carla smiled. "We came to make amends." Dawn didn't move. "No, you came to be seen. That's different." The room held still. Madison tried to explain. About the kids, about space, about not meaning to cause trouble. Her voice rose with each word until she talked over herself. Then the tears came. She dropped into a chair, hands over her face, crying loud enough for the baby to hear from another zip code. She kept saying how unfair it was. A woman with 4 kids forced to live crowded, while someone with none gets all this. I stayed standing, arms at my sides. Madison looked up, tear-streaked and shaking. "You don't even have a family, Rachel." "But we do." Behind her, Zach stared at the carpet. Carla looked ready to defend her, but my aunt beat her to it. "You had a family," she said sharply to Carla. "You had 2 children, but you made one disappear." Carla blinked. "You erased her," my aunt continued. "When she needed you, you laughed. Now that she doesn't, you come bearing cookies." No one replied. Zach shifted his weight, tried to speak. Dawn cut him off. "You tried to steal her house. That's not a misunderstanding. That's theft." The last voice came from the hallway. My grandmother. Soft, barely heard all evening, she said, "I saw the lease, I saw the broken lock, I saw the photos from the years you left her out." She looked at me then. "You don't owe them forgiveness." I nodded once. That was it. No screaming, no storming, just silence so thick it swallowed the room. Carla stepped back first. She left the cookies on the counter. Madison wiped her face and followed. Zach didn't look up once. Greg lingered, opened the door last. "Merry Christmas," he said, but it didn't sound like he meant it. We didn't answer. They didn't try to come back inside after that. The door closed. The music resumed, soft, hesitant at first, like the room had to remember how to be warm again. Someone turned Ray Charles back on. The lights flickered as the heater kicked in. No one mentioned what just happened. We passed plates, refolded napkins. My friend Sarah poured wine like we hadn't just watched a family unravel. Later, I stepped outside, blanket wrapped tight around my shoulders. The yard was quiet. Some guests claimed sleeping bags in the camper, curious about how I'd lived. One cousin said it reminded him of being a kid again. He meant it kindly. I stayed on the porch for a while, letting the cold hit my face. They came into my house with smiles. Like they hadn't tried to take it, they left with cookies and pity parties. Not. One said sorry. Maybe they never would. That's the thing about people like them. They don't believe in consequences, only inconveniences. Being told no is always the worst kind. Inside, someone laughed. I heard forks scraping plates of kids sneaking seconds of dessert, the kind of normal noise I'd never heard in my parents' house, unless Zach was the one. Being celebrated, I didn't go back in right away. I stood on the porch, held the blanket tight, and said quietly out loud to no one, I was here. They just didn't see me. Christmas morning came quiet. The house still smelled like cinnamon and coffee. Someone had already started a second pot. I stepped over folded blankets, empty wine glasses, a half-finished plate of pie, the kind of mess that means people feel safe here. Outside, frost glazed the truck. The camper sat just beyond the fence line, pale in the winter light. A cousin had slept out there. She'd left the curtain half open, and I could see a folded quilt on the bench seat. Neat, respectful. I walked the side, yard, ran my hand across the aluminum siding. The same camper where I once cried, teeth clenched, whispering that I would never beg again. I didn't. I passed the spot where Zach had parked the moving truck, grass still dead in the shape of its tires. A single zip tie lay in the dirt, probably from one of the boxes he never unpacked. Nothing stolen, nothing broken. Just a plan that failed. Before going back inside, I paused at the porch. The front light was still on. I hadn't turned it off. They said I didn't have a family. But last night, 10 people stayed in my home, shared food, washed dishes, told old stories. No one cried in the hallway. No one threw anything. No one asked me to leave. I stood at the door, then reached up and flipped the porch light off. No need to leave it on for anyone anymore.